One of the main reasons that I really do enjoy the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or more especially the Star Wars saga, is because of their beautifully interconnected, ever-expanding storylines and characters. As they continue year after year, I actually get to see them evolve in ways that can be both dynamic as well as realistically measured. And with each new installment, I also have the potential to invest in them all the more deeply. By the same token, those franchises' overarching plot threads, ideas, and conflicts can sometimes become so overbearing that the individual installments really cease to be stories of their own, morphing instead into chapters with beginnings that are forgettable, endings that are inconsequential, and middles that rely too heavily on what's come before to really be enjoyed fully on their own. So it really was Fox's decision to, in a lot of ways, separate Logan from the rest of the X-Men films, freeing it from the shackles, so to speak, of a continuing narrative or a specific style and tone that did lead to many of this film's most praiseworthy achievements. Of course, that's not to say that those who have watched the previous X-Men films won't be rewarded with certain Easter eggs, or possess a greater enjoyment in certain character dynamics, such as the one between the title character and an alien Professor X. But at the end of the day, writer-director James Mangold really was afforded the space to make an incredibly focused character piece, and craft a narrative that served itself before anything else. And through that freedom, he really drew out of the story and these characters something fresh, exciting, and satisfying. Especially in the first act, the director just nailed this rugged and worn Western tone. So different from anything that we'd seen in that universe before, but so perfect for his world-weary vision of Wolverine. In this Western world, Mangold didn't make Wolverine the sheriff, so to speak, or even the outlaw. He made him the alcoholic stagecoach driver, and in that position encapsulated all that that character was and all that he'd been through. He'd spent his life traveling for a time with these different groups, but still never able to fully integrate and always outliving. And it was in that excellent first act as well that we really saw what this film had to gain from an R rating. Wolverine's blood-splattered tussles were painful in a way that they had never been before, and not just for the victims, but for him. Because of the graphic detail, we more fully understood that even as this character could heal himself, the pain of getting shot, stabbed, and bludgeoned was real, and the agony he endured every time those claws came out of his hands was made all the more palpable as we were shown the pus-filled wounds that they left behind. The foul language, too, gave me a much clearer picture of not only who Logan was, but surprisingly who Charles Xavier had become as well, this extremely old man who had given up having a filter a long time ago. And to go back to that weary Western tone, Mangold used it as well to show that once powerful, ever-stoic character in a new light. Once a man who could see everything, down to the thoughts in people's minds, was going blind. And that wise professor who nurtured so many young mutants was now confined to tending to a small garden of plants. And really throughout the film, both Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart really did leave it all on the court for this, their final round, and these characters. And their performances really were elevated all the more by outstanding newcomer Daphne Keane, playing this nearly mute mutant that was not only intriguing in her own right, but also prompted us to reflect on Logan's younger years and all the horrible things that he surely endured at that age as well. And moving out of the first act, Mangold did continue to quite successfully construct this quintessential Western narrative, showing us the X-Men universe version of the Mexican standoff, the horse chase, the ill-fated encounter with peaceful settlers, and so forth. At one point, the director even went so far as to have his characters watch the classic Western Shane, which encapsulates well Logan's themes and ideas. In this story, Wolverine is the nameless man of the Old West who'd spent his life cheating, lying, and murdering, but now is being given one last chance to become something more than he had been his entire life. And in those larger themes and narrative constructs, I really found Logan worked quite well. Unfortunately, I did feel like it lost its way once or twice in the second act, especially in the writing. Even as the writers and director knew exactly how to establish that effective and appropriately gritty tone in the first act, splattering it with bloody violence and vulgar language, they weren't quite as adept at crafting interesting exposition or nuanced character dynamics in the second and third. As much as I genuinely enjoyed Hugh Jackman's aged, limping, groaning Wolverine, there did come a point about halfway through the runtime where the film itself started to trudge along at a similar plotting pace, and I may not have minded so much were that second act infused with some stronger writing. It was clear enough what the screenwriters wanted to do. They wanted to construct this poignant story of a girl who needed a father figure and this man who needed a surrogate child, a relationship that would lead to the change that they both always wanted and needed. But I personally felt many of these specific beats that they scripted to bring that story to life were just a bit heavy-handed and ones that I'd seen all too often in other films. And to talk around specifics as to not spoil anything, I also have to mention that the film's ultimate antagonist, though conceptually ripe for some really interesting and dynamic conflicts with our hero, as he could speak directly to who and what Logan really struggled against, was never fully fleshed out in execution to make him all that impactful. At the end of the day, pacing issues and some clunky dialogue scenes aside, I really did enjoy a lot about Logan. In an Ice Eye studio trusting their director, and that paying off in some really great ways, especially in the film's opening and closing. And if only because he's invested 17 years into this character, it was really wonderful walking away from Hugh Jackman's final outing as Wolverine, feeling rather satisfied. And for all these reasons, I will give Logan a 3.5 out of 5 and a heart. I would still love to know what you guys thought of the film though, so definitely comment below and let me know. And to those of you that have not yet seen the film, I will say, go in with tempered expectations. I walked into the film having been told by many people, this is my favorite comic book film of all time, it's amazing! And I think that actually probably lessened my enjoyment just a little bit. So go in just with normal expectations, and I think you will enjoy it all the more. And finally, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.